Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lawrence Chaney, and I would like to talk tonight about one of America's most cherished holidays, the 4th of July. Throughout this nation's history, white Americans have celebrated the 4th of July with a sense of accomplishment, as though they did something profound to usher in the 4th of July. Well, as a black man living in America, as opposed to a black American, there is a big difference, by the way, and those of us who are aware will understand what I'm saying. Well, 2 years ago, I was thinking about this holiday, the 4th of July, and how America seems to be so insanely obsessed with the fact of this so-called freedom that we all share. Well, as a black man, I don't believe in that. I look at the 4th of July as it really is. And if you understand and indulge me for a few moments, I will explain. The topic is the myth and reality of the 4th of July. It's in two parts. The belief held by the majority of mass media-controlled morons who call themselves white Americans that they live in a free country borders on insanity. When they are asked about this nation, they will say, on cue, that in spite of a few minor imperfections, we, meaning them, live in the greatest country on earth. Yes, they're fools. But let's move on. Were you to ask black Americans the same question, you would more than likely receive the same answer, since many of us are severely stuck on stupid and can't see past them. Therefore, in keeping with the spirit of the 4th, I will attempt to explain just how the majority of blacks in America really feel about this holiday. The honest answer would be, we really don't give a shit about the 4th of July. I could leave it at that, but I won't. To the blacks who are aware of American history, as opposed to the American myths, this holiday is nothing more than a celebration of Native American land theft and genocide, capped off by black slavery and ongoing denial on the part of white America. This holiday is an insult and slap in the face to Indians and blacks. Both groups know that America is not free, in spite of white people's lies. Furthermore, for whites to believe that Indians and blacks should engage in a celebration of their nothingness to this nation is madness, pure and simple. America used to belong to the Indians. It was their home. On the other hand, blacks have always been an unwelcome addition to white America's mythical melting pot. After all, except for slavery, what value do we really have to America? Our true status has always fluctuated between victim and disposable commodity. For the whites who, because of blind prejudice, are in denial, as well as the blacks because of being in a racial coma, allow me to offer both groups some food for thought. The real reason that the white man went into Africa was to hunt, capture, and then place in chains millions of black Africans. Once that task was completed, he then began the long voyage to America via the West Indies, losing untold millions in the process. When the blacks who survived the Middle Passage reached the shores of America, they were greeted by and then snatched up by evil, greedy, hate-filled white men. They were forcefully separated from family members and sold, father to one master, mother to another, and the precious children to still another. After that was done, for the next 250 years, white America worked them for free and raped the females of all ages. They lynched them, maimed them, lied to them, stole from them, brainwashed them, turned them against one another for better control, freed them, and then turned around and re-enslaved them by using money and white women as bait. After doing all these foul things to us, you twisted people have the nerve to get upset when we complain about it or ask for reparations for slavery. Worse, you then expect us to drape ourselves in that red, white, and blue rag that you all proudly salute and call your flag. Give me a fucking break. I utterly refuse to join in a celebration that mocks my ancestors and the awful crimes committed against them in the name of white supremacy. Take your flag and pole it waves from and stick it up your collective white American asses. This is your celebration, not ours. The so-called freedom that you all take for granted amounts to continued slavery for black people. Your flag is our noose. Your democracy is our grim reminder. Your entire American way of life has caused us untold suffering, pain, and death. Every star on your flag represents a state that hates that we even exist. The red on your flag represents the blood, sweat, and tears that was shed by my ancestors in order to make white Americans the richest people in the world. The white on your flag represents the insane doctrine known as white supremacy, which has held sway over the non-white world for centuries. It has also caused white Americans to become the most hated people on earth. Of course, their white skin, coupled with an exalted view of themselves, blinds them to that reality. Finally, the blue on your flag stands for the skies that black people in this nation have never seen. That was due to the fact that lacking brains and a backbone, we can't stand up to America or even lift our eyes to see the sky. So there you have it, white America, laid before you in black and white, pun intended. If you're still not convinced, allow me to read part 2. The Myth and Reality of the 4th of July, part 2. On July 5th, 1852, in Rochester, New York, the great black leader, Mr. Frederick Douglass, in a brilliant and compelling speech, asked white America one very important question. What to the slave is your 4th of July? A question, I might add, that still haunts, divides, and remains unanswered 150 years later. Therefore, once again, in the spirit of the 4th of July, I will try and answer that question. When Mr. Douglass delivered his speech to America, the majority of black people were outright slaves. As for whites, the majority of them were only half free, a condition that 150 years later remains unchanged for both groups. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? The very idea of 5% of the population of the United States holding the other 95% of the population in slavery would be absurd were it not the absolute truth. My fellow so-called free Americans, you are all slaves, no matter what you've been trained or taught to believe. This tiny ruling class holds your existence in the palm of their blood-soaked hands. How is that possible, most people would ask? The answer is simple. They control your paycheck. It goes to the very heart of American capitalism. You see, the ruling class, which has grown but not changed over the last 158 years, needs a large pool of prejudiced, mainly white people, who are then brainwashed by ignorance, status, and fear into supporting the ruling class, thereby keeping the wheels of corporate America running smoothly. Racial hatred, greed, class warfare, and chaos are the byproducts of a system that was devised by the rulers to exploit the middle class and working class of all racial backgrounds, with a special emphasis on racially diluted white people. It also functions as a means to keep the majority of Americans, especially black people, from rising up against this nation. That is why in the year 2010, we can all bear witness to the following horror show. In 2010, 2.3 million people and counting are in prison. 1 million are black males. In 2010, 40 million or more lack basic health care in spite of the so-called health care reform. In 2010, 1 in 4 American children go to bed hungry while rich and middle-class white people agonize over what brand of dog food to feed their dogs. In 2010, millions of American jobs were outsourced by corporate America to foreign companies in order to enhance the wealth of the obscenely rich ruling class. This serves a dual purpose. 1, to exploit non-whites through cheap labor. 2, to keep Americans at each other's throats, racially speaking, over the few remaining jobs. In 2010, the lion's share of the defense budget went to the Pentagon, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI in order to fight so-called terrorism abroad and to suppress dissent at home. In 2010, most Americans, especially the children, are still not taught how to think, but only what to think. This keeps them from thinking at all. The mass media, technology, and the so-called education system shares the blame. In 2010, crime, drugs, and alcohol controls entire communities all across America. In 2010, we've removed God from our hearts and allowed Satan to fill the void. So for these reasons, to name a few, the answer to Mr. Frederick Douglass's question can finally be answered. The American slave loves her bondage. That's why they celebrate the 4th of July, to remind themselves of that fact. America, you should be ashamed of yourself. How dare you keep pretending that you're a democracy? Who in the fuck are you trying to fool? Don't you realize that the price for delusion is madness? Stop denying reality. Look at your children, for it is through them that you are now reaping what you so foolishly sowed. Look in their vacant eyes and see the pain, confusion, and utter despair that you have caused. Shame on you. Don't you realize that when the children of a nation suffer, so does the entire nation? America, repent and atone for Native Americans' land theft and genocide. America, ask so-called Black Americans, your creation, for forgiveness. Give them reparations for slavery, your crime. They've more than earned it. America, while you're at it, stop playing once and for all racial superiority mind games with the majority of white Americans. It is a false and misleading concept that could lead this nation down the path to an all-out global race war. Finally, America, you can't erase your many sins, but you can begin to heal old wounds. The key lies in coming to grips with reality. Thank you.